Hi, and welcome to my EFL talk. My name is Bryson, and I have been an ESOL lecturer at City of Glasgow College since 2007. I'm also an ELT materials writer, and today I would like to talk to you about my 10 principles for teaching ESOL. These are principles that influence my behaviours and how I teach my classes. And while you're listening, I'd like you to think about your principles and how you teach your classes. So, firstly, I'd like to start with what an ESOL student is. So an ESOL student is someone who's learning the English language in an English-speaking country. They might be an asylum seeker, refugee. They might be here for work. They might be wanting to resettle, have a family life, or they might be wanting to return. But either way, they want to have English that helps them to live their lives as best they can in the English-speaking country. So ESOL learners, my first principle is that ESOL learners should be at the very heart of learning. This is the adult ESOL curriculum wheel, which we use in Scotland. We use the social practices approach to teaching ESOL here in Scotland, which is an approach that puts the learner at the centre. So if a learner needs information about speaking to a teacher at parents' evening or reading a school report, then the teacher will do a lesson on that specific topic. My second principle is to keep it appropriate. Often EFL course books are not tailored to the needs of ESOL learners at all. So for example, EFL course books often talk about holidays, which might seem like quite an inoffensive topic of conversation, quite motivating, but if your learners don't have the papers to leave the country or don't have the money to go abroad, then this can actually be quite demotivating. So we talk about maybe day trips instead, free things to do in the local area. When it comes to nationalities, think about the nationalities that you have in the classroom. They might not need the European languages, the European nationalities, or the nationalities set out in the course book. So tailor them yourself to, for example, Eritrean, Syrian, Iraqi. EFL course books often talk about famous people, use famous people. They can sometimes be famous people that the students have never heard of or are not interested in. So I quite like to ask my students about famous people from their countries or that inspire them. So in the top right, we have Tayyab Saleh, who is a Sudanese writer. You should check out his books, he's very good. Adnan Karim, who's a Kurdish singer. Malala Yousafzai, who's a Pakistani activist. And Segi Taweldi, who is an Eritrean runner who came to the UK a good few years ago now and was briefly a student in my class before he decided that running was much more exciting than my classes. And he ran for the Olympics in Rio. And the students find him very motivating and inspiring. Oops. Okay. Keep it real. Keep your classes as real as possible. ESOL students need to know how to phone a builder to fix or a plumber. They also need to know when to phone the emergency services and which emergency service to phone, what number to use, and also whether they actually need to phone the emergency services. I've heard stories of students phoning the emergency services because they have a stomachache, or being unaware that they can phone their doctor for this, if they even need to phone their doctor for it. So yeah, lessons like that. Literacy should be included in ESOL classes. Often ESOL learners have jagged profiles. They might not have any literacy in their first language, or they might have minimal literacy in their first language. So in my classes, we spend a lot of time on letter formation, word formation, sentence construction, capital letters, full stops. I like to give them texts which have no punctuation in them and get them to punctuate them themselves. Play lots of spelling games, get them to use the cover right check method for spelling. Okay, and I include ICT in the ESOL classroom. We're doing them a massive disservice if we don't include ICT. Some students are better than others at using IT in class, in their lives. But once they've finished their ESOL course, and they want to progress to employment, or they want to progress to another course of study, then they're going to need some IT skills to allow them to do that. So with my beginner class, I like to give them all the same password, because they always forget it or always type it in incorrectly at first until they get the hang of it. I like to send them homework by email and get them to submit it by email. Try to use the virtual learning environment at the college as much as possible, and send them out to local community IT classes to get them using their English, or maybe pair them up so that students that are good with computers can help those that are that want to learn more. Employability, I often see employability as the fifth skill. I've had students that haven't got jobs because they've gone to an interview and been asked, "Are you trustworthy?" and they've said no. I've had students that have gone to job interviews with jeans. I've had students that have been late at interviews, so they didn't get the job. The interview process in the countries in which we live are often a lot different to the ones that they're used to. So they need to know how to apply, how to sell themselves, how to write personal statements. Try to include as much practice as you can, and don't be afraid of teaching beginners words like trustworthy, reliable, hardworking, punctual, because these are the words that they need to know for those interviews and for those skills. I like to include study skills as much as possible in my classes. I often notice that the students that have been to university in their own countries excel a lot quicker than those that have not completed high school. So I'll teach them how to use notebooks, teach them how to copy from the whiteboard, teach them how to study at home, teach them which papers, which handouts they should be keeping and which ones they should be throwing in the bin. I often find that some students have piles of paper this thick full of practice sheets that they could have probably thrown out. So when you're getting them to copy things from the whiteboard, circulate, monitor, and then check that they're doing it in an appropriate way. Include multicultural communication as much as possible in the classroom, promote equality and diversity. Our ESOL students are often from various different countries. Try to stop them from sitting with the same language speaker as them or someone from the same country. This promotes more opportunity to actually learn English, but also to learn a bit more about other countries. Includes taboo subjects. It's often in EFL we try to avoid speaking about parsnips, so politics, religion. But actually, what we should be doing is talking more about these things. If what to do if they're being abused, what to do if they're facing discrimination, family planning, politics, what's happening, who should they vote for, how should they vote, why it's important, who to write to if to make different changes to their local community, writing to politicians. So yeah, I think these topics should be included, as well as LGBT issues. Don't be afraid of the taboos. And finally, my last principle is to create opportunities for language acquisition. The most important thing for students is to get them speaking the language. They live in an English-speaking country, so they have lots of opportunities to speak English outside the classroom. It's the students that are going to football clubs and volunteering that learn English a lot faster than those that are quite isolated. So this is one of the lessons from my book, The A to Z of ESOL. Students are given some examples of things to do in the area. They read them, and then after they discuss what activities they would like to do in their own local area, and then look for opportunities in the local area to get involved. So thank you very much for listening to my talk. When I wrote the A to Z of ESOL, I used these ESOL principles to create a range of motivating materials for learners living in English-speaking countries. It's available now, and you can follow me at Emily Bryson ELT wordpress.com. Thank you very much.